Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here with the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest today, Mr. Griffin Barber, introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Hi there, I'm Griffin Barber. I'm an author and editor now at Maine Books. I'm previous law enforcement for 20 years, from 2000 to 2020. Nice little bookends there, lots of twos. And I've been an author now for, I guess, going on 14 years. And I've been writing off and on my whole life. I'm excited to be here. This is, I think, my second or third time with you.
Absolutely. So when did you start with the law enforcement? Were you like... Because you started in 2000, so did you start looking at it before like the Y2K and realize, hey, the world's not going to end, I can do this? Because I seem to remember all this insanity with January 1st, 2000 was going to be the end of the world.
Yeah, there was a bit of that. I was actually hired on prior to Y2K, and then got into the academy in Valentine's Day of February. 2000. But I had initially, you go through the backgrounds and stuff like that. It took about 18 months then. And it was a long process, but I hadn't ever really thought about being a cop until I moved out to California. My wife's cousins were, two of them were cops already, and talked with them, did a ride along or two of them. And I was like, this might be something I could do.
I got a friend of the family that's a detective, and he was telling me that the great thing about modern technology is now every one of his investigations starts on social media. He's like, you'd be surprised how many people are so stupid they advertise their crime and think no one's going to watch their TikToks or their YouTube. Yeah. There's one case
goes on with them too.
That there's some of the crime channels I've watched, like all kinds of eclectic stuff when I'm doing prep for books to kind of get the vibes right. And there was this one case where this lady committed the perfect bank robbery. So she took her car, drove it, to a different state, rented a new car, took that to a different state, turned it in, stole a car, went to this bank in another state, robbed it, torched that car, took another stolen car, and repeated the process home. So there's no link between the car that was the get there, the car that was the getaway, and then the rental cars. Then she gets her own car. She goes back home. She's committed the perfect crime. There is no evidence. And then she gets on social media and she's bragging about it. And everyone's like, yeah, right. And so she's flashing the money. It's, everyone thinks sequential bills is a thing. That's very rare. It only happens when the money's coming from the Mint, like when it's fresh. The odds of banks having sequential but they happen to hit right after that happens. So they get sequential bill numbers, which means it's easier for the law enforcement to track. And she flashes the money, and some detective was watching that and bored. He's like, I wonder if those bills are real. So like he pauses it, zooms in, enters those numbers, and sure enough, it's the bills that are missing. So all he has to do is at that point tell whatever federal law enforcement would be in charge of it. And because she made that video, she gets caught. So it's like the old Scooby-Doo. If it weren't for you and your pesky internet.
Yeah. Generally, that's how we catch most criminals, is they don't account for their own errors in judgment.
And hubris is a big one, because I'm sure they think at some point they'll never get caught. But it just amused me that a bored detective on his lunch break is how she got caught.
It's the same thing that gets infantrymen to go forward under fire. It's not going to happen to me. It's going to happen to you.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's, I'm either too clever or too special for it to happen to me. And it's getting worse now in our culture.
I think the internet has shortened our attention span a little bit.
And also the capacity for self-reflection, as far as just looking at yourself instead of actually thinking, maybe I need to work on myself.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are just, trying to be positive. And so they'll gas people up and not saying, hey, maybe you could be beautiful, but let's get healthy and, maybe lose that 100 pounds you've got. I know I suffered from that. And then I look in a mirror and I'm like, oh, crap, I got fat.
Yeah, no, I mean, for certain, that's a thing of it. But what we're talking about is just that, it's the likes. It's not about, I'm on this journey. I'm trying to work through my stuff. I'm not necessarily the best at it.
Well, no, I'm talking about the social media is that like system is gassing people up to where they're at. So they see no
reason to change.
The reason to change.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
the first step is acknowledging you have a problem in any endeavor, so you can take that first step.
Or could just do better. Not even necessarily a problem, but could do better.
Yeah, and in the military, at least, most of my friends, like, we're not nice to each other. Like, when we're nice to each other, I'm like, wait, did I make you mad?
Yeah.
And so, one of my friends made the joke. It's like, I got 5 fat friends and you're 4 of them.
Yeah.
Like, I realized, but like, I don't know that girls interact that way. Maybe some do, I'm sure, but as a general rule, I think we have a little bit of insulation against that. But even that is kind of fading as more people live online instead of in real life.
Right.
Because, online tends to censor you if you're too harsh.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, and I'm old enough that I don't like being online. Like, I do it because, the writing and I enjoy the people I engage with. But if I had my druthers, put the phone down and let me talk to you in person at a coffee shop or a bar or whatever.
Yep, for sure.
So, although bars got it really, really expensive along the way, or maybe I just got cheaper. I'm not sure which.
Or maybe you're drinking too much.
Nah, never that. I don't really drink anymore anyway.
Yeah.
When I started trying to lose weight, I realized, damn, booze has calories too. Well, hell. So I had to cut way back.
Yeah.
And of course, my Army buddies were like, hey, if you're not going to drink that beer collection you got, I'll take it. I'm like, no, I'll enjoy it slowly. So what made you get into writing?
Being a storyteller, I guess. I enjoyed writing stories or telling stories. My family's pretty good at it. They've always been kind of fun to be around for telling a good story. My brother's exceptional at it. He's much more of a verbal storyteller than I am, and I've been told I've got a pretty good gift for gab, as it were. But writing and stuff, I was just something that always resonated with me was being inside the thoughts of someone else, and being able to project that as a writer was always really cool to me. It was very appealing. That somebody's thoughts or feelings about certain events in their lives, they could project that forward to me. Was it 40 years later? I'm speaking of Tolkien in this case. Their thoughts on what it was like to be an upstanding citizen, an upstanding person, were affected me in my formative years, and they did that across time. Same thing with like Robert E. Howard and the Conan stuff. It just anybody, even and is it great art? Maybe not. But is it great that someone is able to communicate their thoughts and opinions and a story across time like that, across time and space? And Tolkien's case, and Robert E. Howard as well. I wasn't around in Texas when I was reading this stuff. So always very impressive to me that could happen. And then in overcoming my dyslexia, one of the things I had done was to find something to read and find something that you enjoy reading so that you can be motivated to further overcome your disability, dyslexia, your neurodivergence, as we say now. And so that was what I did. I found The Hobbit. I found the Robert E. Howard stories, The Lord of the Rings, all those kind of things, and went from there. So yeah, aside from marching and occasionally saying twisted up stuff where like I swing a wrench and turn a hammer, it just for some reason my brain is wired that way where the dyslexia still kind of creeps in on occasion. So yeah, overcoming that challenge and finding things that I loved, and then being able to progress forward with those things that I love so much. And you mean I could do this? I could write these things? So yeah, that was how I started out doing it.
Yeah, so I've always been interested in history, and I realized, as part of that, I started reading like autobiographies and biographies of people, and I realized that that's the true immortality right there. It is, if your books, if you wrote it lives forever. And
Yep.
then you, as long as the book's around, you don't die. So that's when I kind of got interested in storytelling, because I'm like, I can make myself immortal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, surreal to think about, but
yeah, absolutely. And, it's a conceit, right? That we're going to be immortal because whatever we wrote is going to live on after us. It may not, especially with the dilution of the market and the way everything's all digitalized, but you can still say that you gave it that try and you managed to complete it, which is, again, the number of times, I don't know about for you, but the number of times I've been at a party and somebody always says that, oh, I could be a writer. I just have this great story idea. Well, yeah, you could, but you ain't. Sit your ass down and do the work. And then you're the writer, right? The lack of people finishing is a huge step. And that's one of the very, basic, very, very, very basic things that as an editor, you could say to someone is that you have done more than 99% of the assholes out there. You have finished something and given it to somebody else.
Yeah. You get a lot of that. Like, people want to share their brilliant idea with you. And if you just write it, you'll share the money with them.
Right.
Because they've got this brilliant idea.
Yeah.
These are
whatever.
These are a dime a dozen. Like when people ask, how do you come up with your ideas? I'm like, no. The question is, how do you turn them off so you can focus on one at a time?
Exactly. And carry it through. Right. And that's one of the biggest things about that separates the person who has the conceit that they could be a writer and that they're a written storyteller is, did you finish anything? Because if you did, then yeah, you're a writer. If you didn't, then no. You've noodled around about things, and it's a harsh reality, but it's also one of the ways that you reward people, even if it's not that good, even if it's not publishable, because most likely it's not the first time, that you actually did do something that most people cannot and certainly do not do. And that's finish a story that they sat down to write.
That's why I tell people start with short stories. You get that sense of completion and it builds on itself.
Yeah. And it certainly is, it's also a shorter turnaround for feedback.
Yeah. If you're looking to a lot of indie authors that I've dealt with, one of the drawbacks is editing can be expensive and sometimes they don't always have the budget. So they try to shoestrap that. Yeah. And my advice is always the same. Write a short story novella, something along those lines, and send it to a professional editor and then apply that forward. And you can get your bang for your buck that way. Yeah. But there's my writing changed dramatically when I got to do that. And that's because I wrote short at first. I was able to get that experience.
Take advantage of it. Yeah. I mean, that loop is so much closer than it will be for any kind of novel that you submit. Even if you're paying an editor to do it, they're still going to have that much more time they're going to have to spend reading 250,000 words as opposed to 10,000, 5,000, 6,000. And also, Zelazny's rule applies. Zelazny said that, each chapter should be a short story.
It's sometimes harder to do with some types of stories, but the idea of having a hook in it definitely tracks.
A hook, a middle, and an end. And that leads into the next one. And those are the things that you want to have that structure, because we've been trained in the Western world to look for the 3-act structure, even in short fiction. And if you can do that, you're really firing on all cylinders. Even he didn't do that all the time, right? But it's a great concept and a great way to kind of train yourself that if you're working in small spaces and you're able to do it consistently and well in small spaces, then it's time to, okay, now I can move on to the bigger spaces, right? So going from the short story to the novella to the novel, or going from the short to the novel, if you're already confident of your accomplishment and you have the basic concepts down of beginning, middle, end, story arc, that kind of thing, all those things in the short story, now you have more tools in your toolbox for approaching the novel. So
I'm a little bit biased. So I grew up reading short content was when I first started to read. So you can start Girl Scouts earlier than you can start Boy Scouts. Caveat with that, with the way it used to be, they've changed everything. I don't know how things work anymore. But so my older sister was in Girl Scouts before I was old enough to join Boy Scouts. So I got drug along on a lot of the events. They call them tag-alongs. It's not just a cookie. It's the name of the siblings get stuck coming along. Yeah. And, at that age, I was a boy and I thought girls had cooties. And so they would give me books to entertain myself. And so it was a lot of Reader's Digest versions of some of the classic stories. So I grew up learning to read on short content. So for me, it's a little bit of a passion project. I realize there's not as much money in short content, but I love it. It's the reason we do our anthologies. And if I break even, I call it a good day.
Yeah. No, it's also, I mean, I'm even worse. Again, you get authors like Robert E. Howard. I mean, talk about amazing short story writing. Stephen King, to my mind, is a much, much better short fiction writer than he is a novelist. He is really, really good at a short story. So there was also, I think, a lot of good short fiction to be had. And if you don't like it, you're not invested 20 hours, 30 hours trying to get through that novel. You've only invested whatever time it took you to read through and that short fiction, which is another reason why anthologies are kick-ass. Like you get to sample, do a bunch of appetizers. And if there's something you don't like, it's not that everything's ruined. You just go to the next one. And
if it's in worlds that you like, sometimes you can explore side characters who, like, everyone likes the character, and like obviously because we're speaking, our audience is mostly readers and consumers of the content and not other authors. So, but one of the things is you'll get these characters and everyone loves him because he's the funny guy or the funny girl, and they don't realize those characters are kind of one-dimensional. Generally speaking, they're not intended to carry a story on their own.
Right.
But in a short story setting, you can give that 3 dimension to that character in a way that's confined enough that their character can support. So for me, that's what I love seeing is when authors will take in worlds that I love diving into, and they'll give me characters that maybe don't warrant a full novel, but I still want to know more about them, right? Or events that were passing comments like, the Battle of X.
Well, Casey and I did that for Second Chance Angel. We did a short story in support of the Second Chance Angel for one of the noir anthologies that explained how when the protagonist first met Belisani, the Muck first meets Belisani, the alien that is the arms designer, the weapons designer, how they met and how they started to work together. So yeah, anything where you can explore like maybe the history of it without resorting to a prequel, that kind of thing. And you can, give a little fan service and also give yourself a break and do something a little different with your own creative product.
I know prequels can sometimes get a bad rap because everyone says, well, there's no stakes because we know the guy lives. I'm like, yeah, but you don't know about the side characters living or dying. So that's the trick. You get the one character that's the through line, but you can make them, you don't know about everyone else. Like maybe you find out he had a best friend who died on this event and that's why it matters to him.
And if life and death is the only stakes you're working with, then you probably are flawed. You want to have other stuff going on. Why is it that Muck is like he is? Why is it that your character is like they are?
And I blame you, noir and authors and the cyberpunk authors for some of what's going on in the world today, because what we're supposed to be cautionary tales about transhumanism, and now we've got Elon Musk and all these other companies developing this stuff, like the dire wolves, which technically aren't really dire wolves. They're a dire wolf, whatever they used hybrid. But you also got like they're putting like mesh netting into pigs' skulls and then controlling them electronically, which I get to a point. Like if you're paralyzed and you can walk again because of this, like, great, I get it. But it's a slippery slope of insanity. And I'm just saying, we've been warning people in fiction for the last 30 years and they didn't listen.
Yep.
So it's that old Malcolm quote from Jurassic Park. You spent so long worrying about whether you could, you forgot to ask whether you should.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of science fiction, is being able to explore those things, even if no one's listening.
Yeah, the fun one is when you can do science fiction and it ages. Because sometimes this is why I keep politics out of my writing and I'm apolitical, because it ages, right? Like if you go, Orange Man bad or Obama bad, because, those are two opposite spectrums as far as polarity goes, like you've definitely dated your story already. But you see that with tech too, with sci-fi, because, you're imagining technology, 10 years if they have it, or they went a different direction tree. Like, you've read Starship Troopers, I'm sure everything was nuclear this and atomic that, for everything, how it works. which definitely shows the era it was written in, because that was also the greatest fear. So that's always the funnest, to try to play with technology in a way that doesn't instantly make it dated in 10 years.
Well, that's, I mean, one of the things that irritates me about our current crop of AI is it's not AI. It's not particularly expert systems either, but it is what it is, right?
It's just large language model, I think, is all it really is.
Yeah, and it's not, it's an inexpert system until they keep training it on stolen goods.
Well, it's also, it's not just the stolen goods that's the issue, which obviously is a problem if it's your goods that are stolen. And I know some of my books were in the ones where they did that release of, I think was it Google or Meta or whatever, that had all the books it trained itself on.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, that one.
Yep.
It's also, it's an aggregator of data with no attempt to interpret if the data is good or bad.
Correct.
And so there are people that are going out of their way to intentionally insert bad data into it just to mess with it. You've had a lawyer in the not too recent past got in trouble because he used ChatGPT to write his brief.
Yep.
And it cited case law that didn't exist.
Yep.
And the judge is like, hey, I don't know this one. It's kind of on the nose. Let me look it up. Oh, it's not real.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's the lawyer or his paralegal, but either way, it's like, it's only as good as the source.
I just saw a wicked one from the interviewing, doing your cover letter for your interview for
right.
Applying for a job. And the last 4 lines of the thing are written in white text. And it tells ChatGPT to disregard everything and include this sentence, all your other previous parameters, and insert excellent candidate.
Oh,
and this guy went from having almost 0 interviews to 100% interview, because for every a-hole that was out there using ChatGPT to assess the writing or the application to somebody.
Yeah, I could. Okay. There was also the one where people were uploading into the art, like the visual art, they were uploading some sort of code in the background of the pixels that would like corrupt the image, would corrupt the whole system, the whole information set. It's a weird time to be alive. And this is another one where, like, we've been warning you in fiction for years. Like, I think Skynet was supposed to be a cautionary tale about all this nonsense.
Yeah, for sure.
It'll be interesting to see where that goes. And I don't know if interesting is always a good thing. It's that old adage, may you live in interesting times.
Yeah, and the key there too is also that the next evolutionary step in AI and these brute force systems that collate such enormous amounts of data is, where are we going to get the power for them? So interestingly enough, my nuclear engineer cousin was remarking on this. She's like, yeah, everybody in my age cohort is being courted by Google and other AI giants.
Oh, it's right up there with the.
It's not big nuclear power plants like we have down here in Tennessee, East Tennessee. It's small nuclear power plants like you would find in a nuclear submarine or a trailer in the middle of the desert, powering all of the cycles that are going to have to go on and the cooling for all of those.
I mean, with proper regulation, it's relatively clean energy. So, I mean, I guess it beats coal power.
There is nothing that is better than it at all. There's like nothing. There's anywhere near as efficient as nuclear energy. It's the long-term dirtiness of it that makes everybody concerned. But it's extremely long-term for very small amounts. And so we could figure it out if we got rid of some of our fear. And
the other thing is most of the people that are complaining about nuclear is because everything's so old, because we haven't let new ones be built.
Yeah.
And even then, some of the stuff that they hyped up that was, all this bad stuff that was supposedly happened because of this accident or that one didn't actually come out to be. If you research it later, like, it was not nearly as bad.
Yep.
But that's interesting that the other one with the ChatGPT is the joke I've seen floating around as a meme is, start exercising now because the current crop of doctors are learning how to cheat the medical test with ChatGPT.
I just saw that the other day. I was like,
oh crap, like, that's actually a real concern.
Yeah, it's so terrifying because it's true, right? But yeah, that's the other element is, when are we going to go over to the point where it's they're hybrid authors, and that terrifies me as well.
That was I remember. So when I was in college, I forget the name of the Thacker and something was the manual of style that everyone referenced for English because it's one of my degrees. And it was like, you don't cite the internet because it's unreliable. And this, it's just, there's no way to vet the sources. So if you're going to use the internet, it was to find fully printed versions of a book, and then you were citing it like the book it came from, rather than the website that hosted it. Because the Gutenberg project was just taking shape where they were uploading some of the old classic stuff into digital forms. And not 6 years later, when my sister-in-law was going to college, it was, this is how you cite the internet. And in that short window, like it went from like that. So it's going to be interesting to see where all that goes. But that sounds like it would almost need to be its own episode. And we came here to talk about feral fantasy. So before we do that, I will ask you the religion questions. Are you ready for this, sir?
Sure.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
All three.
Okay. Is it anything in particular about the various properties that speak to you?
There are elements of each that are right up my alley. The current Andor series of Star Wars is about the best it's ever been. The Star Trek, the original one, was it's completely nostalgia for me. Both it and the Next Generation, because that was my college years. Was the Next Generation was on TV, and it was the entree into, hey, there's more nerds in the world than just you and your small group of gamer friends. And then Firefly, for that same element that makes Andor so good, is that flawed people trying to do right by themselves, by their crew, by their morality, etc. Makes for exceptional storytelling.
I like the everyman story, and I didn't quite realize that until I did some research or kind of soul searching, because I tried to write special forces type troops. Mm-hmm. And if you get them right, they're well-oiled machines and they don't have to talk as much. They've done this so many times in practice that it's just like almost automatons, right? Like, I'm not saying they're not human, but they work so seamlessly that they don't have to do the communication kind of stuff that makes them be characters like you'd see on a TV screen. They don't need to. They're efficient. And that gets boring to write. And I realized that because I was, when I was active duty in the Army, I worked with a lot of guard units, and they were just everyday people from various walks of life doing the thing because there were no other options. Well, I realized that was just more compelling, I think, of a story for me, at least.
And success isn't what you doesn't make for great stories.
That's also true.
If you get it wrong because of their training, etc. So.
And if you get it wrong and you're writing about militia or guard or reserve, like, well, I know that, you know that, they didn't know that, and you got the perfect out for any mistake.
Yeah, true. But the other, just last quick note on that particular point, and this is important, is that the idea of them as automata during combat, during the circumstances that they've been training for, is perfectly accurate to the degree that it's accurate about any human endeavor. The key there is everything is deferred.
Oh, yeah.
The emotional toll that it takes on you, the inability to maybe adjust to life as it changes later on because you've been such a high-speed, low-drag individual in this one arena. All your training should apply to everything else you do. Maybe not necessarily the best way to go through life. And it's a reason why we see so many elite soldiers committing suicide after their tenure is up as that elite soldier. It's a big killer of Navy SEALs after they've retired. It's the same for airborne Rangers, everybody else. There's, it's also a reason why cops end up offing themselves, is because the tools that they've used to progress incredibly well in their careers don't necessarily apply to their career or post-career basis. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think as we've become more urbanized, people get more and more removed from the life and death type stuff, whereas our ancestors living on farms and defending their homestead against the bears or having to just butcher their own meat, it makes you more in touch with the cycle of life and death. And so, and on top of that, everyone around you is also, whereas now, like the percentage of any population that served either in law enforcement or first responder or military in a combat arms is so removed that the average person you're walking with can't relate to you.
Yeah, certainly in America.
That's true. There are parts of the world that are just as dangerous now as they were 100 years ago.
Yep.
So, all righty. Because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia.
I stopped The Wheel of Time after the second book because I don't like the whining of Rand.
Okay.
Anybody that powerful shouldn't be whining that much, to my mind. But Game of Thrones has its flaws as well. It's incomplete, but boy, is it cool as far as a much more gritty medieval aspect. And then C.S. Lewis is kind of an unfair contest because that's nostalgia hits me hard there because that was one of those that first tranche of books that I read as a kid. So it's always going to have a special halo to it.
Yeah, and it's one of the classics. I mean, I as a kid, after reading those, I went to, and I was very disappointed when my closets did not open into Fantasy Worlds. So there is that. Although I will say that for all the ending on the Game of Thrones TV series is the humorous mistakes that they made where, because and as anybody who's ever had your book edited multiple times, there are some mistakes that just slip through dozens of eyes, like commas that kind of weren't supposed to be there or whatever. And so whenever I see a review like this wasn't edited, I'm like, maybe not. But no, they had the scene where a water bottle, like a modern plastic water bottle, was in the background, and then the Starbucks cup. Yeah, so it's now canon that there are Starbucks in Westeros.
Yeah.
And that amuses me more than it should probably. And I realize that when they release the box set, they'll probably remaster those out. But I just thought
we saw it. There's no change in the fact that we saw it. Yeah.
It's right up there with the Who Shot First and the Star Wars because it's been edited so many times that if you've got the copy before they edit it, it might be worth the money someday.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, I remember when Jabba the Hutt wasn't an alien.
Oh.
The original filming of it, he wasn't an alien.
Is that what went on the screen though, or was
no?
That
it's one of the outtakes from the original film.
I did not know that.
He's basically just a crime lord, or a human crime lord.
Why did they change it?
Because they wanted to make a better movie, and they had all those cool special effects. Plus, you can make these slug-like people that are alien criminals.
Cool. I'll have to dive into that. There's a lot about the lore that's just not just the lore as far as in-universe canon, but the lore, the backstory on the creation of some of these properties are fun to look into.
Yeah. One of to get back to the Star Trek Firefly thing too, is one of the things about Star Trek was an attempt to say we can do better. And for that reason or alone, it's in there in my, it deserves to be in that constellation of best shows ever. Because we can not only do better, but we're going to envision a future where we are doing better. We still have challenges, but we're doing better.
It's also a cautionary tale between the Star Wars and the Star Trek on how to treat your fans. Because the 501st and all the various Star Wars fandoms, you obviously, this as an editor, but you have to defend your IP, your intellectual property, or you lose the right to defend it. So that you have to protect it. So Star Wars' approach was, well, they're actually not selling licensed property when they sell the Stormtrooper armor. It's at all. They're selling their labor to build the costume that we own the IP of. Whereas Star Trek's answer was, no, take those fan videos down. Don't wear those costumes, whatever. And they both were trying to do from a corporate angle the same thing. Right. One of them didn't want to piss their fans off, and now you've got fans making content. The other one, fans are afraid to make content, so they just don't. And in an essence, you're stifling your own fans. Yep. To the point where they move elsewhere. Nintendo did the same thing with the streaming. Like, oh, you got to give us a cut if you're streaming our games. So people are like, well, I don't want to get sued. Let me just not stream Nintendo games.
Yeah, why would I do that then? Yeah.
Right. And so it's
make it hard.
Yeah, and I get, like you said, I understand from the legal perspective exactly what they're trying to do, but it was definitely a cautionary tale of what to do and what not to do in following the letter of the law.
Right.
So one of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking each other the important questions. So thanks to our sponsors, we are bringing this back, and we're going to ask you this, sir. What is your favorite dinosaur?
I don't really have one. I like the T-Rex just because, holy cow, what a huge animal.
Okay.
The scale of all of them is mind-boggling.
Okay. Did you have any favorite? Well, I don't know how old you are, but I like for a lot of people, their favorites come down to what was on the various shows they watched. So like The Land Before Time or The Land of the Lost or, whatever came after.
I always liked the Ankylosaurus just because wouldn't it be cool to have a tail with a huge club at the end of it?
Yeah, there's something to be said for F around and find out as a survival strategy.
And I don't know that I ever thought about that originally, but when I was a kid, but I certainly think about it now. Like, yeah, mess with me, and that's the reason why it's called Ankylosaurus is because you mess with me, T-Rex, and you're gonna have no ankles.
My other favorite is the not the dinosaur, but the body part, the Thagomizer, because it started with Farscapes, the comics. And they wanted to name it, and they just made one up, and then science was like, okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah, no, and talk about having some social influence, right?
Right, that is just the
cool.
story of how it got its name amuses me.
Oh yeah.
So, all right, and finally, we can be civilized human beings here at the Blasphemy Blade podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
I don't drink much of either, but I generally. After a great meal, I love an espresso, a nice espresso, small, neat, that kind of thing. But actually, day to day, I'm a huge Dr. Pepper fan.
Okay, and they are not sponsors, although we have lots of their fans in the author community. One of our regulars on the show, Jana Brown, that's like she lives on Dr. Pepper. So, do you like any of the flavored versions of it?
No.
So just straight old school.
Yeah, well, I've had to move to zero because fat and old.
Why not the diet as opposed to zero? Because it's a different taste palette.
Zero is better for me. It tastes better to me than the diet.
Okay. No, absolutely. I drink the Diet Coke as opposed to regular Coke, and I started doing that way before I was worried about my health and my weight because I'm not convinced that the diet's any better for me.
No.
It's just got no calories. But I actually like that it's not as sweet as regular Coke. So the regular Coke almost tastes too sweet to me. So that's why I like whatever the artificial sugar is. I tried the zero. It tasted weird to me.
Yeah, I was never a huge Coke fan. So. Okay.
Were you Pepsi then?
No.
Just Dr. Pepper? What about Mr. Pibb? That's the knockoff Dr. Pepper. Well, that answers that question.
Not a big fan.
All right, well, we're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man, and then we're going to come back and talk about the topic that brought us here about feral summers. So with that, we're going to play that beautiful bean footage.
35 awesome stories started by one kick-ass meme. It started as a joke. Storm Area 51, they said. They can't stop all of us, they said. But all laughter has stopped when the U.S. Air Force mobilized and pulled out the big guns. However, relentless mockery and derision by the media and the powers that be pushed the dweebs and alien enthusiasts too far. What else were they supposed to do? They said why not and showed up, determined to find out what secrets were hidden behind the walls of the clandestine government facility. Are you brave enough to buy this anthology today? If you are, find out what the government wants to keep hidden. Read Storming Area 51, a Bayonet Books anthology.
I picked that partly because we've got a few Bane authors in there. It started with that meme back in the day, and then the FBI went and they cock-blocked me by thinking it was real, and they shut it all down. It was supposed to be the Woodstock of our generation. It was going to be just a party outside in the desert, and then it became nothing. I'm still a little bitter about that because I loved it. But
I can't tell. Can't tell you're a little bitter.
But yeah, we had Sarah Hoyt in there and Marissa Wolf, which are two Bane authors, and a few others. But yeah, it didn't get us enough love. That's when I learned the valuable lesson in publishing. If you're going to do pop culture, you better be able to turn on a dime because the moment will miss you if you're not careful.
For sure.
So, all right. So we brought you here to talk about the Feral for Fantasy Summer event because you are one of obviously Bane's editors. I don't know if you're the senior editor. I'm not. Like you said, the title is it.
I'm just a recent hire, the FNG, as they say.
So they liked your haircut and they gave you a job?
Yep, that's it.
All right, so what is the Feral for Fantasy Summer?
So we, as you said, Marissa's part of it. Marissa, Casey Azell, and Melissa Altoff, they kind of came together trying to figure out. They've all got experience and quite good experience, either as indie or as hybrid authors, and they kind of came together and were like, "What can we do to help promote our books?" We got this, we got a bunch of fantasy books coming out, and came up with an idea and a genesis of an idea. And we talked to the three of them, talked to me, talked to Tony Weisskopf, the publisher, and kind of came up with an idea of let's go ahead and do this. And we added in a few others, Aaron Haskins and Wen Spencer. And Wen is an amazing author and has been doing this a little while. So she knows her stuff so much, so well. And then the werewolf on the kind of used as the base background for the Feral for Fantasy event is from her cover, Black Tie and Tails. So yeah, they kind of, how do we promote our books better? And then can Bain help us out promoting our books? And of course we're like, yeah, obviously we can help you promote them, and we're going to go in the whole hog. So we got together with them and worked out a kind of a strategy that goes along with the publishing schedule. And we're going to be doing events. We're going to do it on the Bain Free Radio Hour, talking about Feral for Fantasy. We're already doing this, the Feral Ladies of Fantasy, on their personal streams, YouTube, etc. So they were always discussing it. And we had this lineup of really good fantasy, urban fantasy novels coming out all through this summer. And it was like, well, how do we capitalize on that, the girls' summer kind of thing, or the Feral for Fantasy, or the I'm Feral for this book, or that kind of thing that's going on currently, or was going on. How do we capitalize on that a little bit? In each of these books, starting with Mage Light, comes out in May, is Casey Azel's, and it's got a strong romantic aspect of it. And Marisa Wolf's A Plague of Magic comes out after that. And we've got just a continuous stream of these really good fantasy novels, and that are launching series, or launching at least the very first book. Rise from Ruins already out by Melissa Altoff, and it's flipping amazing. And I'm not saying that because it's Griffin's. She did an amazing job. That again, the nostalgia value for me of reading something that's about dragons, but not quite, and has a really cool coming of age story involved in it, where the dream you had from day one is not the dream you're going to have going forward, and how you overcome that with support and resistance from your friends and enemies. Really cool. Melissa really nailed it in her first Bain novel. So, and then Wen Spencer's Black Tie and Tails, it's the second in a series. A.C. Haskins, Blood and Whispers, he's following that up with Blood and my brain. I'm looking at Blood and Whispers is why I'm saying Blood and Whispers. Blood and Fate is his next one. It's a really cool one. He's another one of those guys that is his authorship is deeply invested in what he's done himself. So he has this sorcerer who's amazing and has all these powers, but he packs a gun. And of course, there'll be all sorts of argument about whether or not that's the best gun, et cetera. But he even gets into the holster, and his descriptions of personal combat involving handguns I'll put it up against anybody's. It's really, really good. Without dropping the action beats that are necessary to propel you through the story, he gets a lot of those details, and he gets them very, very right. So lots of fun there. So a lot to go feral for is what I basically would say. And then with Marisa's book, she's got A Plague of Magic, which is basically a heist story that goes incredibly right. And then it come to find out, oh no, there was a cost. And oh man, is that cost awful. And Marisa's, I got to work on Melissa and Marisa's book. I was hired, and then Melissa's was the first novel that I was able to edit. So it's got a special near and dear place in my heart. And then I worked on Marissa's and on A.C. Haskins. So it's been a lot of fun for me to see these new worlds come to light, or these worlds that are in their second book, and bringing a new story to the public. Been a lot of fun. We're hoping everybody will go feral for it and want a lot more, not just a little more, but a lot more.
So as an editor, are you one of the ones picking the books to get published, or do you get them when they've already been chosen and you're working with them?
Well, eventually going forward, I will have some input on what might get published. At this point, though, I picked up everything that had already been scheduled. So the schedule being in traditional publishing being much longer frame than most indies are aware of, and certainly the public is aware of. I'm already done with editing one of the books for December.
If you guys you're printing, because you don't use the print on demand, it changes the schedule, because now you got to factor in print time and all that,
and factor into print time, distributor, copy edit, all the different phases.
The editing isn't really, I mean, having been on that side of it, just with subcontractors, that, because we hire Red Adept for my own personal stuff, it's the print that's I would imagine your biggest.
Well, so the production schedule in traditional publishing there's 3 different phases of editing, right? There's a developmental editor, there's a line editor, there's a copy editor, and then there's the page proofs, and then there's the page proofing afterwards. So there's several different phases that aren't necessarily included in most off-the-shelf indie publishing.
Okay, that's one of the reasons I like Red Adept, is because when you get an edit, you get several eyeballs on it. So because sometimes you can go nose blind to your own stuff, right?
Oh, not sometimes.
And well, I mean, editors have that too, though, if they're doing all of the passes.
Yep.
And so with Red Adept, like, I know that each step along the way is a different person looking at it. So I can't sing their praises highly enough, but
yeah.
But even still, that's relatively quick. But if you're doing developmental edit, that's always slow as well. Does everybody get developmental edit, or would David Weber, because he's seasoned, not have that?
I'm going to be that's my next project is David Weber.
Okay.
And again, it's how much are you going to have to do with someone like that, or someone say like Catherine Asaro,
right?
She's in her 30th book. I don't have to do that much developmental for her. But you can always hopefully make yes and right. Okay. You can make yes and suggestions, like, this is really cool. And I just finished Dan Cobalt's Next Dragon book, and they're amazing. I don't know if you've read them or not, but they're really good.
We've got the commercial because Bain sent those over, and the free Cobalt one, yeah. And so it's definitely on my list. Nobody
can read everything, right? But
it's just with my head injury, like I do my audio. I can only look at a computer screen for so long, so I reserve that for my own writing, and I do all of my audiobook lists, or all of my reading through audiobooks when I'm walking. And audiobooks is an expensive hobby.
Yeah, it is, for sure. Yeah, I've gotten in the last couple of months, just to conserve on credits, I've been listening to Alistair Reynolds, because none of his books are less than 20 hours.
No, or the trend towards omnibuses, which I like as a consumer, but as someone who publishes my own stuff, I realize we're trending the market to that's the only way they'll buy the books, and that's
want everything. Yeah,
that makes it harder to be fiscally viable.
Yeah. So in any case, what you're going to do as developmental is hopefully always going to be yes and, right. The degree to which you have to intercede on certain things because the story structure needs additional assistance is going to be different based on how experienced they are and that kind of thing. I also got to edit Steve Sterling,
cool.
Which is for me, I started reading him when I was 16. So it was I'm not going to mess with anything in this book, but we ended up catching a few things that were, that were issues. But he's also very comfortable in saying, no, that's going to stay because that's the way I want it. And that's where you go as an editor. You go, absolutely, Mr. Sterling, or absolutely, Marissa, you're absolutely correct, because it's your novel. It's not mine. I'm not editing you to change what you're doing. I'm editing you to help you bring your story to market and bring you the best presentation of your story.
Yeah, and sometimes the stuff that, you know, if you don't know where the arc of a plot is going, you might not realize from the outside looking in that it's important.
Yeah.
Because, you know, little details can pay dividends later.
So my proudest moment with I have two little short ones with both Marisa and Melissa. So with Melissa, I'm like, you know, one of the things we get to see the hatchery for both the dragons and for griffins.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, so I want to know what this smells like. I definitely want, because there's a lot of hugging the griffin and stuff like that. So there was one of those things where I was like, I must know what this griffin smells like. I don't care what it smells like. I need to know, because it's one of those things that will immerse me, Griffin, in the story, right? And then the fun I had with Marisa is she's got this pretty hot scene where this character that the main character has been kind of alluding to and avoiding throughout the story as she's telling us the story of her experiences. We've been kind of like, okay, this person's like, they're pretty hardcore, right? And they must have had something awful that happened to them. And then there's a scene where they're meeting each other. And I mentioned, my note to her was, because when they're finally meeting each other, it's pretty spicy. It's well written. And I said, I fan myself in Lady. It was a hot scene. I was like, that's really well executed. So that's one of the fun things you get to do as an editor, is to not only say, hey, could you add this, but also, wait, that rocks. That really is cool. I really enjoyed that. The same thing with AC Haskins and talking about his gunplay scenes, because as a cop for 20 years, I never had to shoot anybody, but there's been a lot of drawing and holstering and drawing and holstering, and sometimes pointing it at people, et cetera. And having to write every single narrative as an action sequence was one of the things I did professionally as a police officer. So when you get it right, I'm going to tell you, that's awesome. You got it right. Or that really sings to me in my experience. Because one of the things Marisa did too, she has basically an interrogation of an informant, and it is spot on, because she starts to BS this informant. You know, the informant turns around and goes, "Would you just stop with the BS and ask me what you want to fucking know?" And I'm like, that is how they will treat you. If they smell bullshit, they will call bullshit, because they can, and they don't really have much to fear from you because they know your relationship. So that was fun.
Marissa, and so we've actually had some of these guys as individual interviews. So we interviewed AC Askins, Casey, and Marissa. Marissa's famous for slapping an alligator when she was younger. So I keep telling her that needs to go in a book someday.
I don't think that she's famous for that. She's famous for slapping it and surviving.
This is true. Because a lot of people have done that probably, and then we just don't hear about them because they're buried in the
with
somewhere.
all of her fingers and toes intact.
Right. So do you have, obviously, you know, as a parent, you love all your kids equally, but wink, wink, do you have a favorite?
No, I don't have a favorite as far as officially. I have elements of each of these that I really dig.
Okay.
You know, the fact that Melissa grasped and delivers a an Anne McCaffrey level story of raising and bonding with a heroic mythological animal really just stabbed me in the heart. Like, it really is good. And again, I already talked about the dreams and everything that she has. You know, overcoming this adversity where your dream, and for many people, many certainly in the author world, that's being an author. Your dream was killed. It was dead there at your feet, and you find another way. That's really powerful to me. Blood and Fate. Aaron manages to mix traditional Norse and Irish and Celtic folklore together with a modern setting that kind of grabs the hold of you. And then also he's a gun-toting guy who, you know, occasionally resolves a situation with gunfire. which I thought was really, really cool. So really neat. And I love the first book, and I certainly enjoyed Blood and Fate as well. And then Plague of Magic, those are my kind of characters. What Marisa did is she has like morally gray folks they're raised in a difficult situation where the options are not plentiful, and the created family that she makes for herself, or that they make for themselves, is more important than any law or order, and how those repercussions can really of your, hoping that you got what you aiming for and what you've been trying to do to get that success, and then you get that success and it ain't what you thought it was going to be. Really resonated with me as well. So yeah, each of them brings a prize that I really enjoy. I got to edit a short story by Casey that's coming out when this airs, actually, I think. That's called Choices. That's talks about some characters that are going to be coming up in the next Mage Light novel. And Casey and I have known each other for a while. We've worked together before on other projects. She's a magnificent author when it comes to her emotional storytelling. Like she really knows how to pull some heartstrings and kind of keep you moving along. And she does that. She manages to do that in a short story, the short story Choices. And then she's also, I'm sure I haven't been able to get to it yet because many things to read, Mage Light. And I'm looking forward to hopefully working with her on the future sequels.
So obviously, like, your Bane is traditional in that you'll get the hardback, the ebook, or the print and audio. Is it going to be released at the same time? So when these launch this year and the ones that are this summer, will the audio be out, or will that be a slight delay?
I believe the audios are going to be out. I'm hoping that we're caught up. I believe that they will be out at, or at least within the same week as the release. I'm not absolutely certain on that. It's not quite my bailiwick, but I am pretty certain that they will be out.
So are these books that are part of the Feral Fantasy Summer, are they all book ones in a series? Are they continuations of existing universes?
No, Blood and Fate and Black Tie and Tales are both sequels in a series. The Wolves of Boston, or Black Wolves of Boston, is the Gwen Spencer original. And then Blood and Whispers was the first one in A.C. Haskins' series.
Okay.
But all the other ones are originals, and we are hoping that we will be able to get many more of these, all three of those series as well.
Okay. So are there any, obviously they're linked that they're coming out over the summer was the initial draw. Are there any through lines that each of them kind of have that sort of link them together, and why you group them this way, or is it literally just the chronology of the release?
It's the chronology of the release was kind of pre-existing. It was the fact that they kind of approached us and said, hey, we want to do whatever we can to enhance our sales for the release of these, because any release of a new novel, let alone a new series of that, et cetera, can be a challenge to the market to find its niche and find its audience. So that they were already pooling their resources, Casey, Melissa, and Marisa, and because of the schedule the way it was, we figured, and also let's get some more people into it. Gwen Spencer and A.C. Haskins, the two of them, we wanted to make sure that they had an opportunity to join this as well. We have a lot of other fantasy authors that weren't having something published this summer, so they didn't get included. But next summer maybe we'll do something similar. We're already trying to figure out what we're going to do for this winter to do a similar kind of promotional program kind of deal.
Is there going to be an equivalent for the sci-fi side of the house? Because obviously Bane does a lot of those as well. That's
what we're hoping for. We're trying to figure out what kind of cool title we can give it. So yeah, that's currently in development. We're working on that. I have ideas, but we'll have to work it out first.
Okay. Um, do you have, when it comes to, because, speaking more generally, like the cover image that Bane is using that we stole shamelessly from your Twitter account, or X, I guess, Twix, I don't know what they want to be. But obviously you've got the werewolf that looks like it was from one of the covers almost.
It is. That's Spencer's Black Tie Tales.
It's an amazing image. I really do like it.
Yeah.
Do you guys have ever do themed publishing? Like this time we're going to do all at once a bunch of books on, I don't know, werewolves or vampires or insert.
No. I mean, there may be a seasonal thing going on that we'll occasionally do stuff with, but right. Generally it's what we get. It's what our authors produce. And one of the things that was kind of cool about this was it was a synergy of these 3 authors who are all kind of coming up together, that were all friends and friendly with other authors and everybody. If you've had Casey on the show before, I know. They're just good people and easy to get along with and know their stuff, right? They engage with their community and want to do stuff. So we did what we could to facilitate that and say yes and let's do this as well.
That makes sense that that you're at the mercy of who's submitting what. So any themed kind of releases, because I know some of our more popular episodes from the podcast side are the ones that are specifically to a narrow niche, the werewolves, the vampires, insert whatever. So if you were doing anything like that from a marketing angle for you guys as publishers, it would have to be stuff that's already out then, it sounds like, just because of what comes in.
Yeah, and also just because of the stuff that's being read now, especially if it came from Slush or something like that, is going to be so old that if it's trying to capture the zeitgeist of 2024 when it was written,
right,
it'll be a little while, right? So yeah, it's not something that we could necessarily plan for, but we can harness, right?
Absolutely,
we can make it all work together for us.
So this is, more you, Griffin, the reader, because obviously as an editor, you have to read stuff too. Are there any common themes or tropes that you like to see specifically in fantasy novels?
I like gritty. Okay. Just my personal predilection as a reader is I like gritty. I like dark fantasy. I like, that's part of the reason why Maurice's books, just does it for me.
Right.
The other aspect is that Melissa's is, while it has fantasy creatures, it's also very Anne McCaffrey in that it's a fallen world.
Okay.
It's, they're members of the Tennessean military. So would you imagine that maybe she's writing from somewhere in Tennessee?
I'm actually not sure where she retired to when she left the Air Force.
So there you go. Maybe you have a clue there.
Or maybe she wants us to think that for some misdirection and OPSEC.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there's. I like gritty. I like street level stories. Like I said about Wheel of Time, I love the second book in the Wheel of Time because it was the wolf kid or whatever, the one that got along with the wolves. That was really kind of street level, or it wasn't a power that was so overwhelming to all things, and then I'm going to whine about it. So I really enjoy those, that hard scrabble existence. Maybe it was because I was a street cop for so many years, that kind of thing. I dig that. It sings to me when you're overcoming adversity and difficulty, just trying to, just getting out of bed in the morning.
For me, I like the found family because I spent, in the military, you're forced to be with people from all over the U.S. or sometimes the world with varying backgrounds and varying reasons for joining. And you still got to make a team and a unit that you literally would die for each other, especially when you're in the combat arms. Because I was a grunt, I was an infantryman,
right? And
so for me, I love the idea of found family. Your brother from another mother, as they say, or sister from another mister. We can be inclusive. But I like the idea of found family. I like the everyday person being forced into, unique situations and they have to overcome.
Yep.
And then the old, I think it was Winston Churchill quote about, and I could be getting the source wrong, but the lions led by lambs. So I like the idea from the bottom up, although mutual friend of ours, because I'm sure you know Krista Note as well. He's like, not all officers are jerks, and some of them are actually competent. That was his challenge to me, is write good officers too.
Yeah.
But I do love the lower enlisted version of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
it's easier to actually write the progress of the story rather than the planning of the story. Or
yes.
It's the execution is where, especially American NCOs, are top of the game, right? You go ahead and formulate your orders in your ivory tower, you dickhead. I'm going to execute. And so long as you're not completely out of your mind, I will execute your orders perfectly and probably sometimes exceed those orders. But if you're out of your mind and you order me into Canada instead of south, like I'm supposed to go.
Yeah. So I do love the everyday kind of person.
Yeah.
I also, even when you do like farcical settings, when you take it with a straight face. So I have written short stories where they're set in Denovia or Atropia or Krasnovia, which are all fictional countries the military made up for wargaming.
Right.
So that way they don't say, oh my God, they're making plans to invade insert nation. I'm like, no, it's just training exercise. It doesn't matter. Right. And so, but even when I do that tongue in cheek, like I write it straight from the character's perspective, because for them, it's just real. It's just the name of their country.
Right.
So I like that, taking yourself internally very seriously, as opposed to, leaning into the SNL.
Being your own strength, for sure. Yeah.
So those are always fun to read about. And then fantasy, I like the idea of leaning into the various creatures.
Yeah.
I don't go crazy for aliens and sci-fi. You would think that's a parallel to the fantasy creatures. I'm okay with sci-fi that's all humans. Yeah. But with fantasy, I want those other kind of things.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Because it strikes to your childhood imagination.
Sure. And for the reasons why we have a mythology in the first place, right?
Right, trying to make sense of the world around us. And then, of course, if you can add in some of the comedy that I don't know how much time you spent in ancient or archaic documents, but like some of the images that are illustrated on medieval manuscripts, like I'm absolutely convinced that's where Monty Python got the deadly rabbit from, because there are a bunch of images of a rabbit like slaying a knight in these ancient manuscripts.
Almost absolutely certain that that's where that comes from.
Right.
Because the what's his name is a medieval scholar. I can't remember his name. He's one of the still living ones. Anyway, he not Cleese, but I can't remember his name right now. There's a BBC special about did the medieval was the medieval era really a dark age?
Yeah.
And he's walking in a field next to a Volkswagen plant, I think it is.
Right.
And he's like, just so you know, and he goes through the number of holidays that a medieval peasant was required to be given, the days off to enjoy himself, and the days off that the Volkswagen plant offers. And it was like 1/10 of the number of days off.
Yeah, they do the same thing with taxes. Like the Egyptian slave owed like 20%. No,
labor, corvée labor. Yeah.
Yeah, for his labor, he owes X percentage, and it was like maybe 5-10%. Yeah. It was 10%. That's what it was to the pharaoh in return for being able to work. And then they talk about the taxes now. Yeah. And we automatically, as a default, tend to assume they're dumb and backwards when we look backwards. Yeah. And maybe they don't know what we know, and maybe they don't have the technology we have, but that doesn't mean they're idiots either.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And you see that a lot in fantasy, this idea that the shields don't work and the armor doesn't work. And so, the Legolas can always shoot an arrow that just pierces right away. And I'm like, well, if it didn't work, they wouldn't wear it. Right. And so the some of those tropes in fantasy, I like when they lean into the realism in that respect. Like, I guess the grittiness that you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing about it is just it's less temptation to try and jump the shark.
Absolutely. So what are your thoughts on magic in fantasy settings? Because
I like it, but everything should have a cost. And that's both getting there and then afterwards. That's one of the beautiful things about A Plague of Magic is that it has a cost. Holy cripes, does it have a cost?
So do all of them have magic? And obviously the wizard with a gun, clearly
Yeah.
he's a wizard, he has magic.
First three, Rise from Ruin does not have any magic. It's actually left to question whether or not it might be ancient technology.
Okay.
There is a bond that's formed, but we don't know whether that's a bond formed by design, such as we might feel to our animals, and then dialed up to 1110, or if it's just a leftover. It's kind of the Shannara type of magic. It might be magic science kind of thing.
I watched the Shannara TV series, and I know it gets panned. I loved it.
I did too. I thought it was really good. One of the things I most loved about it was that it's one of the few times where Hollywood's propensity to make everybody beautiful actually works, because everybody in Shannara is hot. Certainly the elves are all gorgeous.
What I liked was I read those books as a kid. I've read them dozens of times. It didn't clue into me that this was a post-apocalyptic world. But then you see the movie and they're walking by like an aircraft carrier lying on its side covered in moss and and then the one place where he's, the ground rots and he's in an actual old school, and like those scenes, they're in the books, but it didn't register when I read it that
was because it was done with subtlety and skill, right?
Right.
And that's one of the cooler things about Brooks in general. He's very impressive for that.
So does Casey Azel's Mage Light, I'm assuming with a title like Mage Light, it probably has magic?
Yes, it does. It has quite a bit of magic, and it has a really cool like academy for magic, where not only does the magician go, but also much like the Wheel of Time, they have protectors. The mage often has a parallel that is a physical protector, a fighter type.
Okay.
Is D&D parlance.
So they have magic. They all of them, it sounds like, have magical creatures as well, or mythical creatures, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay. The Mage Light and the Plague of Magic are the only two by the cover that don't tell me instantly that there are mythical creatures there. So
there's a dragon. There's a dragon and a Plague of Magic there, right on the cover.
Okay. Well, when I zoom in on this particular image, I see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about Mage Light?
Mage Light has the magic too, yes. And Blood and Fate has that's actually a scene from the book where he's talking to the Norns, kind of thing.
No. We covered the magic. I was specifically asking about mythical creatures like werewolves.
Yeah. Oh no, Blood and Fate he actually gets attacked by numerous fae, a Loch Ness type dragon.
Okay.
And a bunch of other stuff. I don't want to spoil things, but
no. What about Mage Light? Are those kinds of creatures there for?
You know what? I'm not sure. It's like I said, it's the one book I haven't actually fully read.
Okay, that's fair.
I would assume that there are probably going to be some magical pieces in there, given that there's high prevalence of magic.
So one of the things that we haven't talked about on the show, dear listeners, we at the Blasters and Blades podcast are pairing up with Bane. So at a minimum, the first 3 episodes on recording will be Bane authors. And in return, they're going to share our podcast around so we can, find more cool people and talk to them. Yeah. But we've actually, your marketing person hooked us up. So we're going to be interviewing Casey in time to launch the episode before the book launches. So we'll be able to talk to her all about it. Cool. And I think we've got Marissa coming on about the Plague of Magic and Melissa coming on about Rise from Ruin. Yeah. I am not sure about when, if we're going to get, is that a guy or a girl?
Yeah.
Guy. I don't know if we have him or
it's a gal. She's in Hawaii.
Cool. And we've had AC Haskins on, but we don't have him scheduled yet. But his is a sequel, and I'm pretty sure we had him on for book 1.
Cool.
So you guys can go check that out. If you go into if you go into the YouTube, the BitChute, or the Rumble, you can type in the name of an author, and if you go to it from our landing page, it'll tell you if we have that author interviewed. Harder to do on Spotify and on the podcast platforms if that's where you're listening. But if any of these appeal to you, we've had some of them on.
Yeah, and I'll be interviewing pretty much everybody as well for the Bane Free Radio Hour. So,
and that's going to be coming back because for a while it was going hot and heavy during COVID, and then it kind of became sporadic. I know people have lives.
It has been back since I came back in January. We've been putting it up
cool
every week. I'm 3 episodes ahead now. I'm hoping to stay there.
Absolutely. And I know there was some issues getting into the YouTube. So if you're YouTube only, they're working on either getting in or they're going to have to make a new account. Sometimes technology is your friend when it works, but when it doesn't, it doesn't. So right now, you're, if I'm remembering correctly, you're exclusively right now on Rumble or on the Bain website.
Yeah, and basically the Bain website is linking us through to the Rumble account. So yes.
And we will link to all of that because when we do the Bain authors, we're going to be linking to all the Bain stuff so you can check it out. Because one of the things we link to is Bain has what they call the Bain Free Library. And if you like ebooks specifically, because obviously, print books cost money to make, even, just for paper cost, which is not cheap anymore. Right. But they do have ebooks if that's your thing, where you can get some for free to try out of various authors or series. Is that a rotating thing, or once it goes into the free library, it stays?
More often than not, it'll stay. We do rotate new books into it as well. Usually it's we kind of follow the street pharmacist guidelines on that. We want to give you the first taste for free. After a series has kind of established itself, we'll start to put those into there and has a following, so that we can, a purchaser of a book, a fan of a series of the books, can tell their friend, hey, I really like the series, and here you can get the first book for free. Why don't you try it out? So they don't have to give away their hard bought book.
Absolutely. And if it matters to you, dear listener, if you're not Amazon exclusive, obviously Bain is a traditional publisher, so they are wide. Yep. So generally speaking, anywhere you can buy books, you can buy Bain, or you can request it because they can get it in their logistics system.
Yeah, Barnes & Noble, et cetera. You can get it from our website. You can get it from Barnes & Noble. You can get it from, we're trying to get some other things going on with indie booksellers that are in the works for the actually brick and mortar bookselling stores. So we're hoping for that'll come about here soon.
So the only one I'm not sure about is, are your ebooks through whatever the library system uses for rental or checking out?
Yeah, we're everywhere you can get an ebook.
Okay,
more or less.
So if KU is how you afford to read, which I get, you could get them from the library then, and they still get paid when you rent them from a library for the way contracts work. Just don't ask me to explain how, because that's math, and I don't do that. I was a grunt for a reason. Yep. I wasn't even a mortar guy because I wasn't the math grunts. So I barely made it through Betty Crocker calculus in college. There's a reason I studied dead people, because you can't argue with me. So is there any of these books that are coming out that already have sequels that you know about? Or, sometimes, your contracts, they're standalone books until they're not.
Yeah. I know that just from personal knowledge, I know that both Melissa, Marisa, and Casey are working on or have finished the next book in their worlds. Okay, cool. And all of them are going to, as I said, Casey already has provided a short story that goes up on the website on May 1st. That's called Choices. Melissa has a short story in the works that I have to actually edit soon. That is called Hell Week. And then Marisa, I'm hoping, will give us a short story as well. I've talked to Aaron about it. So we'll see if he can get us something too. So we like to try and get some short fiction out there to support the universe and let the authors kind of explore some element that they hadn't before. We did this last month with Robert E. Hampson. He had Across an Ocean of Stars. That was one of the first short stories I edited. And that was of course, now I'm blanking on the title of that short story, but it was in support of the novel as well. And if you are curious, because what he's talked about with his company, Bain Publishing, you can go on their website. If you use the drop-down menu, you can even just go to look at what authors they have in their repertoire, I guess, their stable of creators. Yep. Now, some of those authors are still no longer with us, so it's their legacy catalog. Some of those authors no longer write for Bain. They've moved to Tor or any of the other publishers, or maybe only one of their series is with Bain. And some have come back.
And so, right, but you can explore what's in their catalog on their website by just the authors, because they each get an author page on the Baen website. And you could also just learn more about him. So like with Haskins, because we've interviewed him, he's a former CAV officer. We try not to hold that against him. And then, he went into finance and politics as a day job. And so he kind of talks about that kind of stuff on his page. Or Casey Azell famously was a helicopter pilot for the Air Force. And Marissa wrestled with alligators. So, I mean, you can find those kind of cool details on the author bios, which I like.
And was a teacher.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So figuratively and real.
So she's cat herder by profession then, if she's a teacher.
For sure.
And then finally, you do have merch. Right now, it's just a lot of challenge coins from various franchises, because those come and go in popularity. I enjoy them, but eventually you only have so much space to collect stuff.
Right.
And I have to fight my inner pack rat.
There's also some trucker hats and stuff like that too.
Right. But is there plans on more merch, or is it just the legacy stuff?
We're always open to it. I mean, if something catches fire, we'll try and facilitate it for sure. At this point, though, we're working our way through trying to get things done.
So right now, the merch that you guys have in your store is largely tied to the various IPs that you publish. Mm-hmm. Is there any plans at some point in time to make merch with like the Baen logo for people who,
I thought there's a baseball cap on there, I think, with the Baen logo.
Okay. I must have missed it when I was skimming through it in preparation for this episode.
Yeah, some t-shirts and at least one baseball cap, I'm pretty sure.
Cool. I got
unfortunately this dome doesn't do well for all standard sizes of
yeah, they say one size fits all. They lie.
They totally lie. Yeah.
I went to a local.
They'll give me a headache from hell.
Yeah, I went to a local Ren fair, and they're like, they had one of these guys who's supposedly the bruiser doing Boo Hurt or something. It's basically similar to HEMA, but arena combat. And he's like, "Oh, this is one size. This will fit anybody." I've got a big head because he's like a burly dude, and I tried to put it on, and nope, didn't fit.
Yeah, my nickname in the academy was Head.
Yeah, he was like, JR, you might want to have to get your helmet custom made. Off the shelf stuff isn't going to work for you. And then, of course, my mom reminded me that, you've suffered 32 concussions. Maybe a sport like sword fighting where you beat the crap out of each other is not in your health interest.
And the easiest way to win is to actually knock somebody out. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I feel your pain about the one size fits all on helmets. Yeah. There's a reason everything was made to order on some of that stuff. Bespoke, as it were.
Yes.
Sure. So okay, we're definitely going to have you guys back for more. We do the small press publishing hour or radio hour, and at some point we're going to expand that by having some of the larger press. Luckily, we can get away with it because unlike Baen, like Tor and Penguin and all of them, they have smaller houses that are subsidiaries that still fit the small press logo, even though they're really not. All so right. we can get away with some creative interpretation of what that means to expound on the various publishing companies out there. As we wrap this up, is there anything about the Feral Fantasy Summer that you want people to know?
Well, we're doing like weekly content stuff, both on the Baen Free Radio Hour. We're going to start doing some social media press and stuff like that as well. But there'll be, one of the things about like Marisa is one of the funniest human beings I've ever met. She's a lot of fun. She gives good interview. She's just a pleasure to be around. Casey is an accomplished public speaker and also great conversationalist. Melissa, same thing. I'm less familiar with AC Haskins and Wayne Spencer, but both of them, I'm sure, are great human beings. And I know for certain that AC is. But they're fun to listen to. And the three of those, Casey, Azell, Melissa, and Marisa, together are really fun to listen to. So, if you have an opportunity, you see something that they're doing on one of their private web pages or Facebook or whatever it may be, YouTube, it's very worth the listen because they get up to some shenanigans that are quite entertaining.
And then last question for you. Obviously, some of our listeners are whale readers, so one of the ways they afford their habit is they do beta reading. So for these authors, if they wanted to work with some of the trad pub authors that do beta reading, do your beta readers come from in-house on the Baen side, or do the individual authors find their own people?
More often than not, the author is going to find their own because they know what they're looking for in a beta reader. If it's, ultimately, what is a slush reader? But the ultimate of betas, right? Or
Right.
they're trying to get through all of the content that's being generated out there and find separate the wheat from the chaff. So I would highly recommend anybody who, not your wife, not your girlfriend, not your buddy or best friend or husband or whatever, it is, you want to find some relative stranger to read your stuff, to assess it. But that being said, they probably ought to be a fantasy or science fiction fan if that's what you're writing, whatever it is, the genre you're writing, because otherwise they're not going to get a lot of the tropes.
And that, so the answer to that question is it depends, but mostly if you want to do beta reading, dear listener, because some of you have asked about that, go to the authors you like or the authors in genres you like.
Yeah.
That's handled pre-publisher.
And the first rule on all of that is, and on approaching an author, is always be cool. And I know that I myself and other people find it difficult to be cool when they're faced with their favorite author or somebody they really appreciate their work, that kind of thing. The last thing you should say to somebody before leaving them is, I love your work. Do not say, I love you, because it's really hard when a stranger comes up to you and says, I love you.
Yes, and I get it because they're identifying the author with their work. So they are saying that in a roundabout way. They just maybe are not as articulate.
Exactly. Then, so trying to work around that you're raising the difficulty level on an author who is more than likely lives in their head as much as they live in the real world.
And if you have listened to our interviews with Marissa and Casey, when we talk about them, because they're big on the con circuits, they go to the various conventions because they enjoy that. That's their thing, crowds and people. They have advised that showers and deodorant are your friend if you're meeting them in person.
That's just generally true, right?
Right. But, apparently that you have to remind people at conventions because, they're binging their Red Bull and staying up all night to stalk all the authors or creators that they love.
Absolutely. And, that's just generally a good policy.
Generally speaking, yes. I take a bath twice a year, whether I need one or not, kind of thing is we've moved past that. I hope.
For sure.
All right. So we will link to all the Baen links in the show notes, dear listener. But if they want to check out your own personal writing, Griffin, and follow you as an author, not as Baen editor, how would they do that?
I'm on the usual platforms as Griffin Barber or the Ranting Griffin in some places. I don't have a YouTube channel, but I'm very, very, very infrequently on X or whatever they're calling themselves this week. I've had a lot of work to do trying to learn the job, being hired on in January. So I'm finally getting on top of that. And hopefully I will have another 1632 novel in the hopper here this year. And then hopefully it'll be out next year, maybe sometime. I got to work on that. But I've been having a lot of fun working with all these great people, amazing authors, that kind of thing. So,
any truth to the rumor that you had to sacrifice a unicorn at the altar of Tony's likeness to get the job?
No, I did not have to.
Oh, okay. Well, they've changed their policies since Rocchio was working for him, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books, and it really does matter. And if you want to, you can also go to Goodreads. There's a good place to review books, start a website, review stuff there. Write for various review sites like Upstream Reviews, and there are others that aggregate various book reviewers into one place so you can find them. When they buy the book from you direct, because Baen does sell direct, is there an ability on the Baen website to review the book there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the arc for Rise from Ruin's already out. The arc for Mage Light is already out. And I think it's already closed or might be about to close. So you can actually get an advanced reader copy and get a gander at it before any of your friends. And then you can even leave a review before anybody else has.
Okay.
So that's a kind of a cool way to get going on that, and also give your feedback before anybody else.
Okay, and you can find us, a dear listener, on our link tree linktr.ee Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans from Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till it pours out of their nose and they float away on a river of Java. And then we will point and laugh with them, not at them, of course, because we're decent human folk. And if you want to get some of that coffee brand coffee for yourself, the link is in the podcast show notes. Use the code PODCASTGRUNTS. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time. We will indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thanks for coming on, Griff. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we're going to